This 65 game rule is causing a lot of disturbance in the NBA. For those of you who don't know, in order to qualify for the postseason awards, or the regular season awards, rather, in the NBA, you need to play at least 65 games. You want to win MVP? That's cool. Got to play 65 games. You want a $40 million bonus by making an All-NBA team? Tyrese Halbert? That's what it is, right? You got to play at least 65 games. So between Tyrese Halbert and Joel Embiid, those guys are probably going to miss out on what they deserve the most, right? Especially Embiid at this point. From what we understand, he's been trying to play through injuries all season to avoid scrutiny. Is that a positive spin that the Sixers PR staff is trying to put on it? Yes, but also we know the history of Embiid's injuries, and it's completely reasonable to think that that's actually true. You also watched him. Here's my only thing. I believe Joel Embiid was hurt in the game that he played against the Warriors, but the Sixers medical staff could not have predicted that Jonathan Kuminga would have fallen on Joel Embiid's knee. Yes, he might have been a little banged up, but that was a completely different thing. That's not why he got hurt, was because he was already hurt. He got hurt because a fucking grown man fell on his knee. A guy's knees who are famously, not the strongest. It's also true that the Sixers medical staff has been led the last, 8 years that Embiid has been in Philadelphia, has always been kind of shaky. Has always been kind of weird. I'm not blaming this on them whatsoever, literally at all. But the argument now is, how fair is this rule? Pretty fair. Pretty fair. I know a week ago I took the diplomatic route on the whole, or it was Monday's episode. I was a diplomat on the whole. Is this points explosion good for the NBA? It is and it isn't. It is and it isn't. And it will be until it's not. You know what I mean? And at the risk of kind of doing the same thing here, I think I'm going to lean more in the camp of, no, this is only a good rule. But I do think that there are some flaws to it, and I think the NBA is going to want to tweak it. Because who could have guessed that in year number 1 of this rule's existence, we would fall into an instance where the guy who is probably the consensus MVP won't be able to win it because he's not going to meet the threshold. And at this point, who knows with this new injury, who knows how many games he's going to end up missing. Maybe if it's right under the wire, you have to play 65, but he only plays 60. Do they still give him MVP? Probably not. Probably not. Because when Embiid won MVP last year, he had played the second fewest games of any MVP ever. And I think it was 63. I guess I could look that up right now. But I believe it was 63. 71% of the All-NBA or All-Star players from last year are on pace to play at least 65 games this year. It's working, right? People also hated the in-season tournament just in principle as an idea that people hated. What ended up happening by the end of it? Did people sneaky love that? I wouldn't even call it sneaky. I think they just loved it. 5 years down the line, people are going to go nuts for it, right? You want to know else? You want to know the other reason why I think it's working? You know who's playing more games, knock on wood, than they seemingly have ever, at least just what it feels like? Kawhi. And what's the result of that? The Clippers are must-see television. The Clippers are must-see basketball. The month of January were the hottest team in the NBA. Some would argue the best team in the NBA because Kawhi Leonard is playing basketball games. Whoa. But it's a copycat league, right? Guys don't want to play in games. I'm not going to say because LeBron doesn't like to play in games, but I always love to talk about how 2017, 2018 LeBron was the best basketball player that I've ever seen in my life, and it's going to be really, really hard to top it. You know how many games he played that year? All 82. All of them. Played every single one. What did that result in? He got swept in the finals. Now, you're going to argue, well, what? If he only played 67 games in that season, the Warriors wouldn't have won? Nope. The Warriors were going to win that series 10 times out of 10. The Cavs' best chance at winning a championship that season was Golden State losing to Houston in the Western Conference Finals. And Cleveland going on to play Houston in the NBA Finals. That would have been Cleveland's only chance at actually winning a chip that year, because otherwise nobody was going to beat Golden State, obviously, except for Houston, because they should have, right? But if ifs were fifths, we'd all be drunk right now. So I think it's a good rule. You have to have some sort of a limitation on this. I wouldn't be surprised if they end up tweaking it. Are you really going to move it down to 60? You're going to let these guys miss a quarter of the season and still qualify for MVP? That's nuts. That's nuts. That's insane. I think, one of the takes that I just don't really like is when people compare it to like their 9 to 5. It's like, well, if I miss, a quarter of the days out of a year and 365 days of working, if I miss a quarter of the days that I'm supposed to be on the schedule, I'm probably going to get fired. Yeah, you're right. But yeah, in principle, you're right. But it's just not the same thing. Because you sit at a desk all day. Maybe you have a standing desk, right? Maybe you work in a cool office. You guys have beanbag chairs and shit. But you're at a desk all day. You're like working, you're cooking on a line all day. You're working in a factory all day, right? All hard jobs in their own right. But you're not risking like blowing out your meniscus every day. And I'm not interested in the fuckers who are like, I work on my hands and knees and I break my fucking fingers every single day. I'm not interested in that. Shut the hell up. You know what I'm talking about. The average person does not work a job that is as physically demanding as it is to be a professional athlete, okay? So that argument just isn't really I don't think the juice is worth the squeeze there. I don't really think you're saying what you want to say. But in year number 1, the NBA is already faced with this issue where they have to reconcile with the rule that they just implemented. Are they going to break their own rule? No. And they can't. And this notion that whoever now wins the MVP is going to be like a Mickey Mouse MVP. And it's like, well, they didn't actually deserve it. They just had to win it because Joel Embiid couldn't play games. Because Joel Embiid couldn't play games? The fuck? Do you hear what you're saying? It's such a... Only in the NBA, truly, is there this culture of trying to diminish the value of somebody's achievement as hard as people try to do it. People still don't acknowledge the fact that Kevin Durant is an NBA champion. People still don't acknowledge the fact that the Lakers won a championship 4 fucking years ago. And if you're going to sit here, and people all the way, also, there is a camp of people out there who between Russell Westbrook's MVP and James Harden's MVP, it's like illegitimate because they were like makeup MVPs. And it's like, well, if they were makeup MVP, well, not Russ's because his was just because he averaged a triple-double and we hadn't seen that since the 60s and like it was cool. But even in that right, people would be like, LeBron should have won that year. Maybe they're onto something. And not really. I don't want to rewrite history. And I'm also getting off track and I'm kind of forgetting what I was talking about. But to illegitimize whoever ends up winning the MVP because Joel Embiid couldn't win a game, I don't like to be mean on this podcast. I don't like to alienate anybody by calling them a fucking loser and saying that their takes are hideous. But you're a fucking loser, and that's a hideous take. Because what if he only ends up playing 60 games? I'm going to throw up if you think that he should win MVP. I don't care if he's averaging like more points per minute than Wilt did the season that he averaged 50. Fucking cool. Cool. But Tyrese Halbert being like, this rule is stupid. Yeah, I'd be feeling a little bit burnt if I lost out on the opportunity to win, to get a $40 million bonus too. I'd be a little bit bitter about that as well. I'm only going to try to deliver one loser take during this, okay? I'm allowing myself one loser take. The fans matter a little bit, no? A little bit. I'm not asking you to push yourself to the point where you blow your knee out or you rupture your Achilles. Like, dude, if you're hurt, sit out. It's fine. But this notion that missing 17 games, is like not fair at all. It's not reasonable at all. You're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Because those 17 games, like every single night, I don't know how more players don't realize this. They just don't fucking care about this at all. There is some parent, could be a single parent, could be a pair of parents, who like saved for months, a month, trying to make sure that they could take their family to a game to see you. And it's going to hurt like a motherfucker when you're sitting out. We see it all the time. People being like, oh, I got these tickets for Christmas to see Steph Curry and like he's not even playing or something like that, right? It sucks. if you've ever been to a game where even one star player is sitting out, the feeling that it gives you is like, oh, I'm still going to go, but I'll never forget Luka's rookie year. I had seen the Dallas was on the second night of a back-to-back. It might have been at the Palace. I don't think it could have been. It was 2007. No, it couldn't have been. It would have been at LCA. Yeah, it would have been at LCA. Dallas was on a back-to-back, and the night before, I think it was like against Indiana, he like tweaked something, and the whole day I was telling my brother, like, dude, he might sit out. Like, what if he sits out? What if he sits out? It's the second night of a back-to-back. He just got a little bit banged up, and it was like 2 hours before game time. They downgraded him to out, and it was this moment of like, damn. And that's what I'm saying is like, that's not his fault. That's not his fault. You're hurt. You're hurt. There's this argument that, like, Joel Embiid is bitch made because he didn't want to play in Denver. Didn't he play Denver at home, like, 2 weeks prior and gave them 40? Oh, well, that was at home. That doesn't count. He was ducking Nikola Jokic on the road. Or he was fucking hurt. Or he was hurt. People are so comfortable as NBA fans, like, talking shit about these guys in a way, or illegitimizing shit that they do in a way that I just think is corny. I think it's lame. That's what I think about the 65-game rule. It's here to stay. It's a good rule, and I love it.
Beautiful, beautiful. Primary control. Beautiful. Primary control. Beautiful. Primary control. Beautiful.